episode. We are back. I am back. Thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Sharon Woodwell Boydu. You can call me Shari if you love what I do, and I am your host here on Musical Epics with Shari. If today is your first time hearing my voice, welcome. Hi. Thank you so much for tuning in and for deciding to spend some quality time with me. I really hope you enjoy your stay. If you're a returning listener, you know you are the real MVP. Thank you so much for tuning in again. Please don't forget to share, subscribe, review, and rate the podcast on Apple Podcasts. It really helps to push the podcast for other people to also get the opportunity to listen and enjoy like you are. So, on today's episode, there's been some really major life changes. So, I decided to do a life update episode like I do every time there's a major change or every time I've been gone for a long time. The song I decided to use for this episode is God Will Work It Out by Maverick City Music featuring Naomi, Raine, and Israel Houghton. I'm never able to mention that man's name. Oh my God, forgive me, guys. But you know who I'm talking about. Anyway, this song, when I decided to use this song, it wasn't a difficult thing to do at all because throughout the journey of me having this major life change, that is the song that has been the soundtrack of my soul the entire time. So when I decided to do a life update, it was not difficult to choose the song because I knew that was the song I wanted to talk about and use to kind of give you guys an update as to what is going on and where I am right now, so that when my subsequent episodes seem different from my previous ones, you would understand why. So the song was released in 2021, and it was written by Christopher Cleveland, Naomi, Raine, Nate Moore, and Aaron Moses. The song is part of their Jubilee album. You know, that album where the whole music video was black and white, and I think it was to commemorate the Juneteenth celebrations that they have. Yeah, that album, that's the album that this song is on. So this particular episode is going to be very interesting because I've kind of changed the format as to how I've decided to do things. The previous one, how I was doing things previously, is not sustainable, and I'm going to explain and get into all of that in a different episode. But I've changed the format, and so on today's episode, we're going to have 3 parts. We're going to have the verse 1, the verse 2, the bridge, the hook, and the chorus, right? So the verse 1 is going to talk about a different thing or a different stage in my life. The verse 2 is going to talk about a different one. And then the hook, the bridge, and the chorus 2 would kind of conclude the whole thing. And I've divided the episode into themes, into principles, and then into some practical steps that you guys can take from the episode and actually apply to your life. So these are the things that you're supposed to look out for. This episode is not to say that your life is supposed to go exactly the way my life did, or your story is supposed to be the same as mine, or God is supposed to do exactly what he did for me, for you. That's not what I'm trying to say, but there are some principles and some practical steps that if you decide to include in your lifestyle might also help you to develop or reach your goals or realize your dreams. So those are the things that I want you guys to look out for, and not necessarily the details or the tea or the story. No. So let's move on to the first part of the episode, which would be from the verse 1. So the verse 1 says, and I quote from the lyrics: "Before I knew my name, before I drew a breath, he was making ways for me. Now and every day, in each and every step, he is making ways for me." So the theme in this particular part of the song is the wonder of predestination in hindsight. I hope that's how you say the word, hindsight. So, basically, what I'm trying to say is that there's this thing called predestination. If you've been in the Christian circle or you've been in church for a long time, you've definitely heard the word predestination before, and it's the concept that tries to explain the fact that God already knows what is going to happen, and He has destined us for the things that we're supposed to do even before we came on this earth. So there's a verse in the Bible that says that before the foundation of the world, God knew us, and He created us and destined us for the thing that we're supposed to do on the earth. So that is the concept of predestination. So once we start living our life and doing our day-to-day things, we never get to understand, like we would never get to understand the concept of predestination ever, because we are not God. The only person who's supposed to understand and who's supposed to do it is God. Once we begin to understand that concept, then we are turning into gods, and that's not going to happen. But in our day-to-day life, we never get to fully see God work in His predestination nature in our lives until something has already happened and we are looking back at it, right? So looking back in my life, I have realized that God always puts a dream in our hearts. Like immediately we touch on this earth, immediately we are born, the family we are born into, the environment we are born into, everything kind of works together to put like a dream in our heart, something that we're supposed to do. So for me, well, let me just say the major life change so that it doesn't seem like I'm you guys are eavesdropping in the middle of a conversation. So the major life change that has happened is I have moved from Ghana to the UK to continue my studies. So for me, ever since I could remember, like for the longest time, I have always wanted to travel. I've always wanted to leave Ghana. I've always wanted to go somewhere else and travel, mostly via school, like with school, not just like traveling to have fun or like go on vacations and stuff like that. Not really, but I've always wanted to travel and attend school in another country. That was the dream God put into my heart for the longest time, but for as long as I could remember, right? And then we have a choice to either make it happen on our own or to let Him do it. So once we grow up and we get to know like the dream that He's put in our hearts, we are faced with choices, like to either let Him work it out Himself because He was the one who put it there, so He's the one who knows how it's going to happen, or we just take matters into our own hands and play gods and try to make it happen on our own. And then there's the third choice of carving out our own dream instead of going according to the dream that God has put in our hearts. So instead of doing what He said we should do, we tend to follow our own path, maybe because we are not interested in what God said, or we don't think that's what is best for us, or we don't see how it's going to happen, or we are intimidated by how big the dream is. Whatever it is, whatever the reason, we also have a choice to decide to do our own thing. So we have a choice to either do our own thing by making God's dream come true, or do our own thing by creating our own dream. And we can do that by doing what other people are doing and going according to their lifestyle, their dreams, their choices, their goals, like taking that upon ourselves and making it our own. Or we can also get influenced by celebrities and social media influencers, and just because somebody is doing something out there and it's making them big and it's making them, is giving them fame and they're making money and all of that, we decide to take that dream and make it our own, even though that's not what God has brought us on earth to do. So those are some of the choices that we are faced with once we come onto this earth and we get to realize that, oh, this is the reason why I'm here on this earth. I'm gonna just put a pin here and say that not everybody immediately gets to know why they are put on earth. Like, you're definitely gonna know through your lifetime. You are definitely going to know. I just don't know when it's going to happen. So some people get to know it like in the middle of their lives, like Some people get to know it at the end of their lives, and some people get to know it really early. I thanks to God, I got to know mine like not like the entire dream, not like my entire purpose, but like a part of the dream that I could work towards, not everything, but like a section of it that I could actually work towards. I got to know that at the beginning of my life. So I'm talking to people who get to know that at the beginning of their lives. If you haven't found that yet, I think that's a whole different topic for a new episode. Maybe we'll get into that. But for today's episode, I'm just talking to people who already know or have a hint of what they are supposed to do on this earth, and they are working towards it. Anyway, so like I said before, I've always wanted to travel. So when I finished SHS, I didn't want to go to university and do my undergrad in Ghana, because it was around the time that I was going through SHS that I found out, it's possible to travel outside Ghana and study. So I started to look for schools upon schools upon schools upon schools, and I had a plan to write IELTS. And then after I finished SHS, I decided to take a gap year. Instead of buying awaiting forms and going to the university, I decided to take a gap year and then work, make some money, and then use the money to write IELTS, and then apply for schools, like tuition-free schools, and then, go do my undergrad outside Ghana. And one thing I want to point out here was that most of my friends that I graduated SHS with, most of them bought awaiting forms, literally all of them. And just a few of us who decided to take a gap year, and that could have easily influenced me to, also buy awaiting forms and go to school that same year. But I knew what I wanted. I knew that my path is not going to be the same as everyone's, and I had to work towards what I wanted, not do what everybody else is doing. So that's something you should also take note of. So after some months staying home working, I realized that the application process and the application timeline for schools outside Ghana and the one in Ghana was kind of around the same time. So I couldn't apply for both. I had to choose one. So it was either I would apply for a school outside and completely forfeit applying for any schools in Ghana. And if I don't get any school outside, I have to stay home for another year. Or I'll apply for schools in Ghana and completely forget about doing my undergrad outside, because my parents didn't have the money to give me application fee for outside and then pay for my school fees in Ghana, if I decide to do both. So I had to choose one, and I chose to apply for schools in Ghana because I wasn't sure if I qualified or if I would get the admission if I apply for schools outside Ghana. And looking back in hindsight, I'm kind of glad I did. I'm glad I applied for schools in Ghana and forgot about that for that period of time. And during that time, it felt like, oh my God, I'm forfeiting my dream. Oh my God, it's never gonna happen, blah blah blah. But God knew what He was doing. He had already predestined that I was gonna go to Kane University and do Bachelor of Arts Political Science. So there was no way that was not going to happen, right? So that is such a wonder for me. It's such a I'm in awe of how knowledgeable God is, how He's able to just put stuff together. You know what? I'm gonna continue. I'm kind of talking too much. Anyway, so yeah. What I also want to say about this part of the story is that when it happened that I had to choose one and I chose Ghana, I didn't cling so much to the dream that I was not flexible enough to detour, So yeah, of course I was hurt. Of course I was like, oh my God, I can't believe that I won't be able to apply for schools outside. I had to choose one. But at the same time, I wasn't so clingy to the dream that it broke me. No. I was flexible enough to detour when God wanted me to do, although at that time I didn't know God wanted me to do it all, but like I was flexible enough to do like the best thing to my knowledge that I knew I had to do. I was flexible enough to do that. And so when you're like, even though God will give you a dream in your heart, like you will not always know the right thing to do, and you will not always know the right thing for you at that moment. So it's very, very advisable to be flexible and not to cling on to, and you know, you don't even know the time that dream is going to come to pass in the first place. So there's no need to like put timelines on it, put deadlines on it, and cling so much to it that there's no room for God to move and detour you and take you to other places that's going to help build your character and give you experience. Yeah. So the principle here that I'm trying to let you know is that it's so much better and so much simpler to do life with God, but it's not easy, right? When it comes to doing life with God, it's so simple, it's so like better, and it's like simple, like, because God already knows what you're going to do, like whether you like it or not, what God has said about you is going to happen. So it's just simple, and it's just better to like do it with Him, because what He said is going to come to pass, whether you like it or not. You get it? So there's no need to like fight against Him for so long, and then later in your life you realize, oops, and now you're coming to do it with Him. Like, that's just a waste of time. So it's just simple, and it's better to do life with God, but that does not mean it's easy. When it comes to submitting your will and what you want and what you think to His will, child, it is not easy at all. Like, because human beings are free moral agents, and we also think that we can think, and we have knowledge, and we've gone to school, and we have wisdom and understanding, and we can see, and we believe the things that we can see and touch and feel and smell more than the things that have, like, we can't see, feel, touch, and smell. So because of that, it is very, very difficult to submit your will under God's will and say, you know what, I think this is what I want, but this is not what God wants from me, so I'm gonna put down what I want. And child, that is not easy at all. So practically, what I want you guys to take out of this part of the story is that we have to learn to invite God into our day and acknowledge Him before everything we do. So if you're a person who writes a to-do list, before and after you write your to-do list, just submit the to-do list to God. Like, when you do that, nothing would visibly change it, or there will be no audible voice saying, my child, I have seen your to-do list and I've taken. No, that's not gonna happen. Right? But then the acknowledgement that you give to God, like, oh God, I am writing my to-do list, please let me do things that's going to push me towards my purpose. And then you write it down. You say, God, this is what I think I'm supposed to do today. I'm submitting it to you. The things that are going to distract me, take away from my to-do list, that only let me do things that are going to push me towards my purpose. Once you acknowledge God in it, like, you have the confidence, right? You have the confidence to go back to Him when things are messed up, right? So the acknowledgement of God in your to-do list or in your day-to-day activities is not for God, like, it's not to benefit Him in any way, but it's to show Him that we know that we are dependable, like we are dependent on Him, and we cannot do anything without Him. And then in our acknowledgement, even if we make a mistake and we mess things up, we have confidence to go back to Him and be like, God, today things are not going well, but I acknowledge you in this, so why is it not going well? You have to, like, come fix it. And we have that confidence to do it, instead of just waking up and doing whatever we want, and then we are in trouble and we're going to God, be like, God, I'm in trouble, come and save. He will come and save you, but like, the guilt and the shame that you're going to feel going back to Him, knowing that you could have invited Him into your day, but you didn't, and you decided to do whatever you wanted, we can avoid all that when we just start our day off by inviting Him in. So that's the practical tip, and that's the principle I want you to take from this part of the episode. So now let's move on to verse 2. So verse 2 says, and I quote, pushing past the fear, fighting to believe He is making ways for me, and He won't let me down, never ever leave, He's still making ways for me. So the theme that I want to center verse 2 around is the hope of predestination for the future. So The fact that we know that God knows what's happening and where we're supposed to be, what we're supposed to do, how we're supposed to live our life, it gives us hope for the future, especially for people who are dependent on Him. Like, if you're not a Christian and you haven't given your life to God and you're not planning on doing life with Him, this is not for you. For you, we have to start like in the beginning. This is not for you. This hope is for people who have already given their lives to God and have decided that they are doing life with Him. Because we know He knows, like, we have hope for the future that it doesn't matter what will happen. We're going to get to where we're going to get to because, like, God knows and what He says is final. So, looking back obviously in hindsight, like, on my life through the lenses of predestination, like, I was pretty disappointed when I couldn't apply and I had to choose Ghana, but I did. So I was very, very disappointed. And then later on, fast forward, some of the tuition-free schools that I was hoping to apply to decided to cancel their tuition fee programs, like schools in like Finland and Norway. Before, those schools used to be like tuition free, you don't pay tuition, but now they were like, well, you pay something before you come, and then when you've done like a year or so, we'll give it back to you. I was like, I don't have money to do that. Right? But that dream was still like in my heart, like I still believe that regardless of what will happen, all the schools can cancel their tuition fee. I am gonna get out of this country and go like study abroad, right? I'd still believed it regardless. But it wasn't like, oh, I was disappointed and I was sad, period. And it wasn't like, oh, I believe it's gonna happen, period. Like, those two emotions, like those two situations existed at the same time. And that's okay. Like, sometimes when we are Christians, we feel like we're supposed to feel just one thing. Like, we're supposed to have faith with no single doubt at all. Listen, I'm not a pastor, I'm not a prophet, I'm not an apostle, so don't take what I say by hook, something and sinker. No, don't. But I don't believe that we're supposed to have just faith, period. Because no, we're human beings. I don't think that's even possible. Definitely there will be a sliver. Is that a word? I think so. A sliver of doubt lurking somewhere in our minds. And those two things can exist in the same space at the same time. There's only a problem if you decide to feed your doubt more than you do your faith. And if you start to like live your life and do your things according to your doubt more than you do your faith. But it doesn't mean those two things cannot exist. They can't, right? So even though I was disappointed and all of that, I still believe that I was going to travel outside regardless. So when I went into the university, blah, 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 I did my 4 years. And another amazing thing that happened was that if I had traveled outside during that time, I would never had joined ISEC. And ISEC is such a big part of my life. And this is not even a plug. If you're listening and you're in the university and you're all part of ISEC, I'm not telling you to join ISEC. But that's not the purpose of this podcast. But what I'm trying to say is that if I had left the country during that time, I would never have joined ISEC. I would never have done the PADA project. And I would never have known that PADA project would be the thing that I would want to do in the future. Like, you're going to get it later. But joining ISEC was the thing that gave me an idea of what I wanted to do in the future. And if I had traveled, there was no way I would have been able to know that. So, yeah, we did ISEC. Moving forward, we're done with our 4 years. And it was time to choose what to do for NSS, and everybody was doing everything. Like, people knew what they wanted to do. I knew I wanted to be a TA. Like, that's another thing. Immediately I went to the university, God through my dad put this dream of being a TA in my heart, right? And it was like, I was not thinking of doing any other thing than being a TA, honestly. That was what I wanted to do. But looking back, I think the reason why I wanted to do that was because I thought that would be the way for me to get a scholarship to go study outside, because that's what I thought. That's what my dad thought. Like, we all thought that there are a lot of scholarship opportunities in the school. So if I become a TA, then I'm closer to getting a scholarship to study outside. So when everybody was choosing to do their thing at the Ministry of Finance, at the bank, at the like wherever people decided to do that, NSS, I wasn't phased by it. Like I wasn't trying to go where my best friend was going. No, I knew I wanted to be a TA, and I don't care if nobody in my class decided to be a TA. I'm gonna be a TA, right? So that's also another thing. Like the good thing about having a dream in your heart is that it keeps you focused. Hi, editing Sharon here. I realized after recording the episode that it is way too long for me to put everything into one, so I decided to divide it into part 1 and 2. So congratulations on listening to everything in part 1. I am going to post the second part of this whole life update later, but thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate you. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, share with your friends, and like. If you have any comments, any questions, please do well to send me a DM or email me. All my personal details will be in the show notes. You're going to definitely hear the second part of this story, and I promise you it gets interesting. I talked to you about how I navigated my national service season and how God orchestrated everything in such a wonderful way. So you'll want to tune in for part 2. But for now, be safe, be you, be happy. Bye.